Hello and welcome to another episode of the Outdoor Gibbon podcast. March already. It's crazy. The year is seeming to race by, but we're not going to let that get away with us too much. Today's episode is living with Lyme disease. It's a topic that seems to keep coming up, and with these mild winters we keep getting, the tick burden seems to be increasing. Just today I picked a tick, two ticks actually, a female and a male tick attached together off. It wasn't off the dog, it was actually off the cat. My wife went, there's a tick on the cat. So we got it off, and yeah, there you go, breeding pair of ticks. So it was quite a pleasure squashing both of those. But let's talk about what happens if one bites you and that one that does bite you is an infected one. Kate, who we interviewed today, has been there. She has suffered with Lyme disease. We'll get into that in a minute. Where are we currently in the calendar year? So we've had the British Shooting Show. Those of you that may have ventured over to Germany, IWA, the great shooting show, has happened out there as well. So what's our next show on the calendar? Well, it's going to be that great place, the stalking show. If you're into deer stalking and shooting, it's definitely a must to go and see. David Freer this year is making the show bigger and better. I believe last year it covered 3 halls. This time I think it's potentially covering 4, if not 5. There's going to be lots to see and lots to do there. I'm going to be there with Alex, Hunter Gatherer Cooking, and we have got possibly the best competition running this year. Even so, I've just got more prizes today for this competition. So let's just have a quick run through of what some of those prizes you could win. And remember, this competition is completely free to enter. So first prize is another chance to come up on the hill with myself and stalk a stag. But this time you also get a film crew with you. The winners of last year's competitions, Rod and Charlie, are going to come up and they're going to record the day. So they're going to make a bit of a film about it, something for you to keep as a memory. Prize 2 is a weekend roebuck stalking with me up in Aberdeenshire. You can come up here, whatever you shoot, you get to keep. So you may get out there, we may get some small deer, but we may also get a chance to get onto something bigger. So it's another way of making memories. Very kindly donated by Ryan Peach is prize number 3, and that's a chance to go and take a Chinese water deer. As some of you will have seen, I managed to finally complete my UK 6, and I managed to get my Chinese water deer with Ryan down in England. So he's offering prize 3. Then kindly donated his prize 4, which was donated by Dixon Deer Management, and that's an opportunity to go up to Northumberland and have a morning and an evening outing with them and go stalking. One of those outings may well be in a high seat. They're also giving away a gilet, a Dixon Deer Management gilet, in whatever size you want. So whoever wins that, you get to say what you want out of that. Prize 5 is going to be a £150 voucher from the Lucky Hunter. So you've seen his competitions and some of those are absolutely fantastic. So using that £150 voucher, you can enter numerous competitions he's got going with a chance to win thermals, fridges, optics, all sorts of wonderful stuff. So that's a great option. Prize 6, Hobbyhawk Knives has donated a knife into the drawer. Prize 7, Flint Clothing are giving us a hoodie and a hat. So there's a chance to win something quite nice by them. You can tell them the size, whoever the winner is. We've also got something from GMK. They're donating a knife box, so like a field dressing kit and a set of stable sticks. So that's another great set of prizes there. We've got some merchandise from the Outdoor Gibbon, so a fleece, potentially a beanie, and a few other bits. I'm sure there may well be some other items to come into that. So when you get to the stalking show, do check out what's available. Anyway, we're going to crack on now with this podcast and chat to Kate about living with Lymes. The Outdoor Gibbon podcast is proudly sponsored by the Shooting and Hunting Academy, an online training platform and UK registered learning provider that provides a host of accredited and nationally available courses and masterclasses delivered by leading industry experts. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Outdoor Given podcast. Today I am joined by Kate. Many of you will know her from social media as Dead Things by Kate. She likes her taxidermy and stuff like that. How are you doing, Kate?
I'm good, thank you. And yourself?
I'm good. Thank you very much for coming on. I know we've had a few issues with technology, but we are finally there to get this recorded.
I traded in my 8-year-old phone today so I could make this happen.
Absolutely fantastic. Well, thank you. That is a dedication to the cause. So it's really good that you've done that. Well, you've moved up, so you've got the next phone. So absolutely, hopefully you'll be on a few more podcasts then in the future.
I don't know. I'll see how I feel after today.
No problem at all. So let's find out a little bit about you, because obviously people will have potentially have seen you on social media, but anybody that hasn't can obviously go and find you. But how did you get involved in country pursuits and field sports?
So from being quite small, I was always like really passionate about horses, heavily involved in hunting, and that was pre 2004, so that was pre the ban.
Right.
And obviously I've grown up with my father being very much into field sports and the countryside as well, so it sort of just naturally emanated as part of my life. I didn't really get to shooting until much later on.
Okay. So, but you had a passion of obviously like the fox hunt and stuff like that, riding along on the horses and being out on the days and stuff like that.
Yeah, since I've been, sort of 3 or 4 years old, I was always in the saddle. So country life has always been like a big part of my life.
Fantastic. And then it's just taken a bit more of a turn now recently. You've got back into sort of I think going out deer stalking and stuff like that, but we'll come on to that later on, I think.
Sure.
So you're probably best known on social media as the lady that sells exquisite butterflies and things like that in cases and a bit of taxidermy. Is that sort of the main thing you do?
Yeah, so this month will mark 10 years of me having the business, and it's changed quite a lot over the years. I've dipped in and out of it. I've fallen in love with it. I've hated it, and I'm currently falling back in love with it. So it's quite difficult because having to put yourself out there leaves you open to like quite a lot of conflict with people that are sort of anti-shooting. A lot of hunt sabs have sort of targeted me in the past. I've had sort of shop vandalism. So for a little while I kind of went into the shadows and avoided promoting it, but I decided now without a physical premises that I'm just going to push it again, and if anybody starts to give me a hard time, I'll just have to ride the storm, I guess.
That seems really bad, considering that taxidermy is, I believe, it's one of the biggest uptakes of sort of things that people are buying at the moment. You would expect it to be completely the opposite, and nobody really to be having to go at you because of it.
I think it's mainly just people's misconception or preconceived idea of considering that maybe taxidermy is directly related to trophy hunting, and sometimes it's quite difficult, especially with so many people being vegan at the moment, to sort of get them to able to differentiate between the two.
Yeah, I can understand that. It's probably, yeah, it's lack of education,
I
probably
think,
more than anything.
yeah.
So one of the main reasons that we wanted to do this podcast, it was really to, I think you'd listened to something and seen something I'd done about Lyme's disease, and it was really to throw it out there and talk about it in a sort of another level, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think because I've had such a difficult experience with it, and sort of going along the route of not being able to get a correct diagnosis for such a long time, I think I then sort of went on and did a deep dive and spoke to a lot of people in the community with Lyme, and it became apparent really quickly that it's not talked about, and most people are misdiagnosed. Probably more than sort of 50-60% of people have misdiagnosis at first.
So let's rewind right to the beginning. You obviously caught something like Lyme's disease or a variant of it. So how did that occur? Do you know when and where you picked it up?
So it's not really 100% clear. So I've learned now that people can have something called latent activated Lyme.
Okay.
I think I got Lyme in 2017. So I felt unwell enough at the time to go and get a Lyme test from my GP, which came back negative. So at the time, I just thought, I mustn't have Lyme, I must just have a virus. But I found out like much later on in the past sort of 12 months that the NHS tests are only 30% accurate. And not only that, they only test for 1 or 2 types of Borrelia, and there's at least 10.
Oh, okay, right. So that was obviously just picked up. You got that from a tick bite, being out in the field doing something, or even just walking the dog, was it?
Beating. So yeah,
Okay.
beating. Both me and my oldest dog, I've got Woody. We often got covered in ticks, and I never really sort of thought about the risk. I just sort of pulled the tick off and carried on with what I was doing. And it wasn't till sort of maybe 12 months later I started to notice that there was a lot of things going wrong with my health.
Right. So let's talk about, can we sort of expand on that? Because obviously there'll be people that listening that get tick bites all the time. I get tick bites and things like that, and anybody that's out in the countryside, and they always tell you to look for that exact, like the bullseye or the feeling of a cold. For you, was there those symptoms to start with?
So it's not really that clear. I do remember the onset. Afterwards, I started to get like really bad migraines to the point where I couldn't function for days. And then I started to get a lot of colds and what seemed to be like low grade fevers, and they would pass. I don't really remember a specific bullseye, but then when I think back now, I recognise exactly where the infection was. I got like a really swollen left knee. It must have been like that for about 6 or 7 months.
Right.
And I thought it was a PCL injury, but my whole knee was sort of red hot. Had like a lot of red around the joint and swelling and a lot of pain and discomfort. And I think coinciding with when I started to get unwell, that was when the knee sort of, what I thought was an injury, occurred as well. So I must have got a bite on my knee, but most people, they don't remember being bitten. They say a lot of the time that in order for you to have Lyme, you need to have erythema migrans, the rash, but a lot of people don't get erythema migrans either.
Okay. Yeah, because I suppose it's just one of those things. I'm pretty vigorous. I come off the hill, and the first thing you do is a full check of the body and find the tick that's normally it's attached somewhere around the midriff, and you're like, oh, you got to peel that one off and go. But it's funny how different people seem to have different effects. Now I know other guys that come off the hill and they have no ticks on them, or there's people that come down and it'll be, oh, I picked 5 ticks off me or something like that. And everybody seems to have a different response to being bitten by ticks.
I do think so. Cast my mind back. So I remember having a chat with you on the phone saying that I'd been up on the hill in North Wales beating.
Yep.
My first sort of day back out, and the first drive is called Nick the Tick, which sort of should have been a bit of a warning sign. But when I came out of the first drive, I was covered in ticks. So I don't know why they were all over me and nobody else, but they were in my hair, they were in my hat, and I guess this was my first experience back out, and I was so anxious about it. And then I guess now I think it was maybe good immersion therapy. But
I was gonna say, yeah, it's not a good one, because I think that's, I know people have had Lymes as well, and they do seem to. It's almost like the ticks are drawn to them. Whether or not the ticks know this is a good host, I don't know, but there must be something in it. But then it's all the other things you can do to try and prevent it. So let's go back a bit again. Obviously, having Lyme's disease, how has that affected your day in, day out life?
I think probably this is why I need to speak up, because since I started being a little bit more vocal about it, I've had so many people contact me. It's probably at least sort of 7 or 8 people a week.
Right.
And the symptoms, they're all sort of a bit nondescript until they're so bad that you can't ignore them. So probably the first thing I noticed was just general malaise, lots of migraines, then lots of joint pain, random joint pains that sort of came on and off. Probably the worst thing for me was I had a lot of deterioration in my vision. So my eyes became really blurry. They were sore. I couldn't tolerate like bright light. And I would say that's probably the only thing that I'm left with now is like a deterioration in my vision. So I was hoping at some point to have a chat with Ed Lyons and get some prescription glasses, just because I feel like that's the only thing at the moment that's sort of holding me back, is like the lasting sort of damage to your eyes.
Right. So that's obviously your experience. I know other people suffer different things. As I say, one of my stalking friends has Lyme's disease, and it's done irreversible damage to his nerve endings and things like that.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. So it leaves you with like lots of problems with the nervous system, definitely. So, beginning of the year, I couldn't lift my right leg. It just I wasn't able to get on and off a horse. I had very little movement. I couldn't walk very far. I would be exhausted and having to sleep in the day. And a lot of people sort of said, "Oh, this is it now. You're sort of stuck with this." They wanted to give me like pregabalin and loads of sort of pharmaceutical drugs, and it just wasn't an option for me. So, being a little bit out there, I decided to go like a fully holistic route with it and treated myself with lots of cold water therapy. So I've actually pretty much got full sort of normal function with my nervous system. I guess the only thing now I feel maybe is the cold a lot more than I used to before.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's something similar to the lad I know. He suffers with his fingers and the cold. If it gets really cold, it's like, well, I think we all, as we get older, we all suffer with cold anyway. But I know his fingers went numb. We were out on the hill shooting hinds, and I had a message from him. It's like, would you hurry up? My fingers have gone numb, and he's there trying to warm his trigger finger up. So yeah, I can understand that feeling.
I think it's difficult because there's so many different factors that happen when you have Lyme disease. So a lot of people can have complications like Lyme carditis, and a lot of people feel like they've got long COVID. And I think a lot of the time people get missed for the early symptoms because they think they've got COVID. So it's quite difficult to pinpoint everybody's symptoms because they're all so different. But I think for me, just losing the ability to do things that were natural to me, that I'd done all my life, it becomes quite depressing when you can't sort of function. And
Yeah, I can understand that. That was one of the questions. It obviously, just following on from that, it obviously, what's it done to your day in, day out lifestyle?
I don't know, it ruined my life for a long time. I wasn't able to do a lot of things that I used to do. I found, just working, having to plan everything around one day because I would be exhausted for a couple of days after. It really impacted every aspect because when you have Lyme that goes undiagnosed for a long period of time, it eventually crosses the blood-brain barrier. So I also had something called neuroborreliosis. Again, this is something that's not really talked about, but that can give you anxiety, it can give you like mental health problems. And for me, I just had anxiety all the time, and it was sort of completely out of character. And we sort of couldn't pinpoint it, and we thought maybe it's down to stress, but it was because the Lyme had actually passed through that barrier in the brain.
Right. Okay. That doesn't sound nice at all. But you now say that by doing your cold water therapy and things like that, you seem to have managed to get yourself slightly under control, and obviously your method of treating yourself has helped.
Yeah, so I did go a little bit further with the nervous system repair, and I actually did a course of microdosing. I don't know whether I can say that on a podcast, but that really helped me a lot.
Okay. And that's and so you feel now that everything's sort of more, you've got control again of your life, basically.
Yeah, I feel like I'm sort of 90% better. The only thing I sort of struggle with now is maybe if I overdo it, I feel tired for a day or so, but that's after a couple of days stalking.
Right.
And I feel the cold.
Yeah. But so basically having Lyme's disease when you had it really stopped you wanting to go out into the countryside, and it gave you a bit of I think you said it gave you a bit of a fear or a phobia of ever getting a tick on you again, kind of thing.
Yeah, well, I initially got misdiagnosed with fibromyalgia. So it wasn't that I sort of didn't want to, I just wasn't physically capable of doing the things that made me happy. So in turn, all these things kind of, well, it really wears on your mental health after a while, because you can't really explain to people you look fine, but obviously there's a lot of things going on in your body that people can't see.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, and that's the worst thing. It's those things that you can't just put a treatment to and say this is what I've got, because at the end of the day, you've just said it there. You look absolutely fine, but yet internally, mentally, it's absolutely crippling you. It's putting you to not wanting to be able to do anything.
I think the problem is I must have been to the GP, I don't know, so many times, and they would just tell me there's nothing wrong with you, it's in your head, go away, the joint pains because you're getting old. And I was like, I'm not old. So you literally get no support, and to be told there's nothing wrong with you when there's something going on, it's really difficult. And I notice like a lot of people get diagnosed with endocrine disorders and things like ME, and particularly one that stands out for me is Alzheimer's. So there's a recent study that they did, like an autopsy on 5 brains of people with like advanced Alzheimer's, and every single one of them contained Borrelia. So I think the lack of education and the lack of appropriate treatment and all of these things combined are what makes it so difficult for people with Lyme to get better, because it's not, they just don't have any experience. They don't know how to treat people. People are just sort of brushed under the carpet, or if they do manage to get antibiotics, they're given like a really short dose.
Right.
And I think, knowing now and being part of like the Lyme community, you need sort of about 9 weeks of antibiotics, and that's not something that the NHS would give you. So I definitely want to give you some links to some treatment and some ways to get tested, and people that specialise in Lyme, so that I'm hoping nobody else has this experience that I've had.
No, absolutely. Well, I think back to when I was a kid and you used to go roll around in the grass fields and all the rest of it, and there was never a mention of tick bites and Lyme disease and anything like that. And then it's probably over the last sort of 10, 15 years, we've been made more aware of it. Then there's talk of there's potentially, what is it, vaccinations for it, and you see it for the dogs and cats. You can go and stick something on them and it's absolutely fine, but this vaccination never seems to be, it hasn't really got there, has it? And all of a sudden now Lyme disease is becoming more and more prevalent. The tick numbers, well, we see that anyway, the tick burden is massive. It's the increase of ticks all over the place. It's like, I'll let my dogs out to run around our garden, and guaranteed in the early parts of the year, they'll just come in from just walking up and down the drive and there's a tick on them. And we've found ticks in all sorts of places, obviously on us, on the small child. And you're like, my wife gets very, very upset when the ticks are in the house. It's always my fault that the dogs have brought them in or I've brought them home. But it's one of those things that I don't think it used to be that bad. But what's changed? Why? And obviously the temperatures have changed and the tick numbers are just increasing.
I do have a theory. Um, so I've really gone down the rabbit hole with the research. And for me, I don't think it correlates to deer. I don't know whether you know this, but when a tick bites a deer, the deer neutralizes the Borrelia.
No, I didn't know that. Okay.
So it's an interesting one. For me, I think the culprit's badgers. We've seen an explosion in badger numbers, and we've seen an explosion in Lyme. And it crossed my mind that the area I live in, or did live in, there was a lot of badgers, and it did make me think that maybe that's where I'd picked up Lyme, in that environment.
Quite well, as I say, badgers are now on that protected list, aren't they? And
Yeah,
there's certainly a huge number of badgers up around us. And if it is something, maybe that's anybody that's listening that's into research or doing a PhD, maybe this is the new PhD to get out there with and to look at the correlation between Lyme's disease, badgers, and deers, and see what they come up with on that one.
I think it would be worth looking into. For me, it seems more reasonable to suggest that it would be badgers.
Well, the interesting thing is, if we look at it in terms of the hill, for example, especially the sheep population that they put out on there now aren't dipped in the same way they used to be dipped. The sheep dip used to be fairly carcinogenic, and we were saying it killed everything. It literally just annihilated everything that went on them. But now we seem to think that a lot of these sheep dips and sprays and things like that they get covered in, does it actually kill the ticks or does it just repel the ticks? So the ticks aren't picked up anymore by the sheep, and therefore we see a lot of obviously ticks on grouse, and we even had a fox. I think Tom said the other week he's never seen a fox with a tick burden as bad as that, because foxes are usually pretty clean, and this one came off the hill. He'd shot it and it was absolutely covered in ticks, and that's really unusual.
Oh, I'm getting a little bit of trauma just thinking.
No, I don't mean to upset you, but it is. It's
About
one of those things you see it through different parts of the year. But as you say, the tick burden definitely throughout the UK is getting higher, or it's throughout the world. I think is just seems to be higher than anywhere anytime any other time.
I think we need to somehow, um, when I'm in the deer stalking group on Facebook, and I often see people comment about Lyme. I think it would be useful to for someone to try and correlate some information of where people are picking up sort of Lyme in the country, just so we can get a clearer idea of, where is more affected.
Absolutely. So anybody listening to this, because it's not every tick has the necessary bad bacteria that causes Lyme disease. It's certain ticks, so yeah, you can get a tick bite and you can be completely fine with it. But there are certain ticks it's like anything, you'll get a tick bite from an infected tick, and that can be the problem. But again, it's up and down the country. It depends where these ticks are and where this population is. So that's not a bad idea. So if somebody fancies creating a survey, I'm not doing it, I've not got enough time. Throw it out there, create a survey, and everybody could fill in where they've had picked up Lyme disease. It'd be really interesting to actually see that come through, wouldn't it?
I think so. And as well, people just don't talk about the fact that ticks don't just carry Lyme. They carry like a bunch of co-infections, and I imagine that's why some people get better and some people don't. So
Yes.
even if, it'd be really great for people to really look into it and see what other co-infections are being carried by ticks in what area.
But it's one of those things, it's almost like you need like a research facility. They do say if you get bitten by a tick, keep the tick, because you never know if it's needed to. They can get the information from it. But it would almost be, you want a lab somewhere that you can get a tick bite and send, or a tick, and send it in, and they can pull the information out of that tick and see what it was containing. And it'd be an interesting survey, and at least it would allow. Well, the problem is it will tell everybody, oh, you want to go here stalking because the ticks are free. They don't have any bad diseases.
There's no ticks where I've been going stalking recently. It's brilliant. I've seen one tick and that's it.
Oh, that's fantastic. So yeah, we'll jump on a bit now. Obviously, you're on the mend. You're feeling much better because of it, and that has now allowed you, I think, to start to get back out again. You're obviously back out. You've been beating, and I think you've rekindled the passion for stalking, haven't you?
So just before I got really unwell, I went up to Otterburn to see Al Gabriel from Basque, and that was supposed to be my first sort of proper day stalking. And I remember just travelling up there and just not feeling very well, feeling cold, and going out on the hill in absolutely freezing conditions and just really struggling with the cold. So that again should have been a sign for me. But after that, I just wasn't physically able to get back out, so I never actually got anything. And that was, you know, pre lockdown, so that was sort of the beginning of 2020. So I made a sort of a promise to myself that in sort of April this year, that by the end of the year I'd get back out stalking by my birthday, and I actually did it much earlier. I think I got out in July. So yeah, I'm getting back into it. I've got a lot to learn, but I think I enjoy the whole process, you know, the extraction as well, looking for the deer, learning about the deer more than just taking something home with me. So I'm not rushing.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I think we tried to organise a recording, and it was your birthday, and you were out, and I don't think you got back in time or something like that, and that's why it's taken a while to get this one sorted. But that's really good. Now, obviously, there's an awareness. You're out there stalking deer. You've just said the land you're on doesn't have any ticks on it. But what are you doing as sort of a because I think we spoke, let's just wind it back a bit. We spoke before, and you said you had reactions to different chemicals and things like that because of the Lyme disease, and you were a bit worried about going back out into the field, and you were looking for something to give you a bit of protection. Do you want to expand on that a bit?
Yeah, so since I contracted Lyme, I've become like really allergic to permethrin, like anaphylaxis type reaction. So if there's someone sat near me in the beta truck and I can smell it, I'm like, oh my god. But for me, I think there's lots of ways to prevent Lyme. There's lots of natural ways to prevent it. So you can eat things they don't like coriander, they don't like garlic. So for me, I think with knowing that I'm so allergic to permethrin, I think I try to avoid using any sort of chemicals now, and I generally tend to use sort of essential oils, spray them on me, but also I actually run herbals now, so I take artemisia, black walnut and clove, and that prevents well, I think it prevents you getting Lyme. It's a treatment for Lyme. So so far so good. For a while I was really scared about getting like unwell again, but I'm over it now. Just enjoying being happy and do my thing. So
that's the main thing. I think ticks, just for anybody that's listening, that obviously what Kate's just spoken about, ticks are they're put off by strong smells. So if you eat garlic and things like that, and you eat a lot of it, you actually physically sweat it out your pores. And that was my theory for last season, for making every curry like 3 or 4, 5 or 6 cloves of garlic every curry. I must have stunk of garlic, but I didn't get any tick bites. So it obviously does work.
You can also get like garlic capsules that aren't so pungent, and you can add them to your diet as well, I guess. So
the Outdoor Gibbon podcast is proudly sponsored by the Shooting and Hunting Academy. Through the academy, shooters, hunters and those involved in the use of firearms can gain an in-depth and unique level of training that enables them to shoot better, behave more effectively in the field, up their strike rates, as well as learning new skills. Crucially, those new to deer stalking, the Academy also offers the Proficient Deer Stalker Certificate Level 1, the PDS1, a deer management certificate that is nationally recognised and accredited both by LANTRA and UK Rural Skills. Visit the Shooting and Hunting Academy to find out more. Let's get back to the show. Yeah, and it's things like that at least it gives you that little bit of, I think, ticks. They don't have really a brain. They just have a set of sensors that go about and find what they want to latch onto. But if those pungent smells are about, it seems to confuse them or keep them away, doesn't it?
Well, I've not had one since, so fingers crossed for me. I think I was talking to, wasn't I, about the tick repellent washes.
Yes.
For me, I'm fine with those. So I've been wearing stuff with tick wash, and I've been around people with the permethrin type infused clothing, and I've had no reaction to that. So for me, I think that's something I'm going to pursue and sort of do it that way rather than trying to spray myself. So I think that's my plan anyway.
So anybody that hasn't listened, I think I did an interview a couple of months, or it was probably longer than that back, and I spoke to a chap there from, I think it's Rovents, the tick infused clothing. So basically this is a clothing you can buy, socks, trousers, shirts, underlayers, things like that, that actually have promethial, it's bonded into the fibers of the fabric. And I think Kate and I were talking because she was so worried about a reaction to it, and then you phoned me up and said that you'd been out with somebody who'd been wearing it and you'd had no reaction to it.
I think, yeah, so now on that sort of thought, I got some tick socks for my birthday and I've been fine with those too, so I'm definitely going to go down the sort of tick repellent clothing route for me, I think, now.
That's fantastic. Well, at least it shows that there is. So this is basically, it's a really nice way to look at it, that you will always have Lyme's. It's something that's there, isn't it? Now, once you've got it, it's with you. But at least you've found a way of dealing with it and moving forward, and hopefully enjoying life again.
I think for me, a real breakthrough was a couple of weeks ago. I had a course of antibiotics for a tooth, and they're the same antibiotics used to treat Lyme. So if I still had Lyme disease, I would have had a reaction to the antibiotics, and I didn't. So for me, that's good enough.
I'm going to say that's good. Yeah, that's got to be a positive, hasn't it? So realistically, this podcast is to get out there and really sort of help raise that awareness of Lyme disease. And we almost need people to listen to it and say they need to put a bit of pressure on and go, come on, NHS. I know you're stretched already as it is, but Lyme disease is a real thing out there. We need a bit more better testing and things like that. So hopefully Kate's going to give us a load of links and things like that for people to go and look at, which we'll put in the description. And we can pull more information from that.
I think we really also need to sort of make people aware of the co-infections that you can get alongside Lyme, because I wonder if perhaps they're sometimes worse than the Lyme itself. I don't know how much you've looked into the tick-borne diseases, but when I was tested, so the NHS testing was negative, and I also had rife. So definitely wanted to mention that if you suspect, or even if you're curious, that the fastest and cheapest way to check for Lyme and co-infections is to get something called rife or bioresonance. So you just find yourself a local practitioner and they will test you. And they basically, it sounds quite far out there, but they use frequency to test you. And I had 2 different lots from 2 different practitioners, and they both brought up the same thing that matched my blood test. So that would be like a good way of checking without having to spend sort of £1,200 on private testing.
Right. Okay. That's always handy for people to know, because it's not, obviously, if you want to go private, unless you've got private medical cover, it's going to cost you money, but potentially it's a life-changing situation. So it's sometimes, it's worth doing at the end of the day. If you do suspect you've had a tick bite and something's not right, it's certainly worth getting it tested. So what does 2025 and the new year hold for the new Kate? Because obviously you are completely invigorated now.
I'm still shocked that I've got my life back, because I didn't think it would happen. A lot of people sort of told me on the journey that I would never get better. During my treatment, it was definitely rough, but I think if you catch Lyme early, it's easy to treat. So, I think just getting the awareness out there so people know straight away can save them so much, so much time, so much worry, distress. So for me, having spent the summer treating myself, getting better, probably one thing I'll mention, that if you take doxycycline and you have a bad reaction, it's sometimes can be called something called a Herxheimer. So that generally means if you're getting die off from Lyme, that you'll get a bad reaction and you will get worse before you get better. So for me, now that I'm sort of nearly back to 100%, I feel like next year for me is going to be about lots of stalking, lots of hunting, lots of out and about, lots of traveling. I homeschool my son, so we do a lot of things together. So he's probably going to come and get involved in the stalking now as well as the beating. So really, I feel like I appreciate things so much more. I took a lot of things for granted, and I definitely won't do that again.
Fantastic. Yeah, because your journey, you've been posting loads of stuff about going through the butchery and breaking down deer in what looks like the kitchen with your son there and stuff like that. So what a fantastic experience and journey to take him on.
He wasn't he's a really active child, and he just wasn't settled in school. So we decided the best way for him was for me to sort of homeschool, home parent, and work that around my business. And I think for him, it's just been a complete game changer. You know, he's happy, he's out riding his mountain bike every day, he's thriving. He's much taller than me now. So I think being able to educate him where his food comes from, educate him about the countryside, what to eat, how to avoid, avoid ticks. For him, it's just been like a really great year, and it's nice to see him get back into field sports as well, because I wasn't out doing anything, he's missed out as well.
Yep.
So I'm hoping he'll get back into doing a bit more shooting, but I can't, it's not up to me. I'm hoping he'll ask me.
I think that's the thing. I think if you just let them find their own way. I know my kids, I'm kind of just not pushing it. I don't want to insist they've got to come out and do it, but if there's an interest, they'll show an interest and they'll come out and hopefully carry on doing it. At the end of the day, we need that new generation to come in, don't we?
I think definitely. The education system doesn't really teach them anything about where their food comes from or life skills. It's quite funny actually, because we met the sort of homeschool education officer, and we were excited to tell her about all our butchery and all the things we've been doing. And the first thing she said to me is that we couldn't talk about using a knife because of health and safety. And I thought, when we were growing up, we're falling out of trees, we're breaking bones, we all had a knife. And I think the way education is now, it's a little bit too closed off, and I think we're losing sort of rural and country skills each year.
100%. Yeah. I do a lot with the scouts, and our big thing is to make sure that they understand where stuff comes from. I'll whip out a whole box of really sharp blades, and literally one of the other scout leaders goes, "Now they are sharp," because everybody knows that there's no point in giving them a blunt blade. At the end of the day, I've seen far too many scouts in other groups manage to cut themselves on a potato peeler, and you're like, it's a potato peeler. How did you cut yourself on that? Let's teach you how to use a knife properly, at least, because there's no information like that passed down. As soon as you mention the word knife, people go, "Oh, you can't give them a knife." It's like, well, they need to learn somewhere, don't they?
I think Oscar's had opinels and knives and all kind of things since he was quite small. So I'd say he was pretty competent with a knife now. But when sometimes we have friends round, they come round for dinner and they're really shocked at sort of how hands-on he is. And I think, we had this kid come round, and he'd never had steak, and we were like, what? So I just feel like getting the kids back into the process of knowing where their food comes from and cooking it themselves, cooking their own venison. I think that's the way forward for me as a parent.
Well, I think that obviously, yeah, you've been out of action for a while with the Limes, but it sounds like you're on a mission, one, to educate, which is great, but you're also on your mission of getting yourself back to where you need to be, which is absolutely fantastic. So yeah, all fairness to you, well done. And hopefully anybody listening to this will reach out if they need to, which I'm thinking you're happy for people to get in contact with you.
Do you know, if I can help somebody, it's absolutely fine. If they want to drop me a message, or even if it's just me pointing them in the right direction, so they can look into it. And I think, my door's always open for that. I don't want anyone to have to go through sort of 5, 6, 7 years of feeling awful to realise that they've got chronic Lyme. So it's easily preventable. There's lots of obvious signs. So for me, I'm really happy to help people.
Perfect. And what we'll try and do as well is Kate will share a load of links and things like that, and I'll get those set up, and we'll probably do a couple of social media posts that we'll collaborate on, so that once this podcast comes out, you'll be able to tie everything together, and hopefully get a bit more information. And if you are sitting there thinking maybe I've got Lyme's or I'm at a bit of a loss, at least it'll be some way of trying to tie the two things together.
I think the more that we push it, the better it will become for people, the more it will be recognised, the more people will prevent, chronic Lyme happening to my words are terrible now. I've lost my words. Can we edit this bit out? Is that all right?
I'm sure we can get rid of that. Don't worry. But no, I understand where you're coming from. Basically, we're trying to make the awareness of Lyme's disease more, rather than, oh, you've got a tick on you, take it off, look for a bullseye. There's a lot more to it than just that, isn't there?
I think early signs for me would be any change in your health, any low grade fevers, headaches, general feeling of malaise or fatigue, any niggles in joint pains, definitely would be a sign. And don't let them fob you off telling you that you've got COVID, which is what I did. So I think you have to push, you really have to advocate and push for yourself. If they refuse you a test, you have to just complain. You have to, you don't need a bullseye rash to have Lyme. It's a really big misconception. If you've been bitten or if you suspect, on the NICE guidelines, any of the symptoms of Lyme show up, it warrants a test, and even treatment without the test, because unfortunately the UK tests are only 30% accurate, and sometimes you aren't even producing enough antibodies for that to even show up anyway. So if you've got the symptoms of Lyme, my recommendation would be just take the antibiotics straight away and treat yourself immediately.
Fantastic. Well, I think what we're going to do is we'll probably we'll wrap this one up here, because I think we've covered quite a lot, and people, as I say, people will be able to go onto the social media and they'll see what we're sharing and all the rest of it. So hopefully it's been an education. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
So please be aware that obviously tick bites, not every tick carries Lyme disease, but they do seem to carry a multitude of other bacteria and issues that Kate spoke about in that podcast. There are some preventative clothings you can buy. There are sprays you can put on. Nothing is 100% tick proof. It's always best to get yourself checked. And if you are in any concerns, go and get the tests done. But hopefully that's a bit of an enlightenment to what Lyme's disease can actually do to you physically as the person who gets it. And I'm sure that there's somebody or somebody close by that suffers from this. And yeah, it's one of those things that nasty, horrible little bug that just gives you a single bite, and if you forget about it or don't check it, can basically ruin your life. So take those ticks seriously. Keep your animals treated as well, because they're the things that are going to bring it into the house, your dogs, your cats, etc. Thanks anyway for listening to another episode of the Outdoor Given podcast. If you get a chance, remember to leave a review. Really helpful. It keeps us up in the charts. Also, we're going to be at the stalking show, as I've said before. Come along and have a chat. Say hello. I will be on the hunter-gatherer cooking stand. I should have my own little corner tucked away, but you'll be able to come and enter that competition and have a chat. Anyway, until next time, we'll see you soon.